Hello, and welcome everyone. We have the pleasure to talk to Supplyframe's head of growth, Alex Peron, today, who has more than 10 years of experience in the field. And I'd like to welcome you, Alex. Thank you for
Hi,
joining us.
hi, merhaba.
Merhaba. And yeah, we can switch to the questions.
hmm
Right. So, can you tell us a bit about yourself, about your background, how you came to be the head of growth at the Supplyframe company?
Yeah, so I left France a while back, like I don't know, 12 years ago or something. I was originally in Toronto, Canada. I worked for a couple startups there. One of them is called Upverter. Um, it was a startup building a CAD software that would run in the browser and allow for collaboration in the Google Docs type of style. And this company eventually got acquired by Altium. And it's around that time that I met Steve Flack, the CEO at Supplyframe. And that's how I ended up working for Supplyframe in Pasadena.
That's great. And how many years has it been?
I would say a solid 7 years. I'm not exactly sure, but I think it's somewhere around 7 years, the
All right.
7 years mark.
That's cool. And you're responsible of growth at the company.
hmm
Can you tell us like what your opinion is on some key drivers for sustainable growth at the company?
Well, key drivers for sustainable growth. I'm not gonna tell you anything magic. I think there's two things that are very important. The first one is to focus on the customers, understand your audience, understand what resonates with every single ideal customer profile that you have, the audiences you're willing to penetrate with your products or solutions. Um, really talking to your audience, understanding them, knowing what works, what doesn't. Keep a library of past experiments where um, this is gonna hit the spot. This is a bad idea. We've already done this. Just not repeat the same thing over and over again, and just continuously optimize. I think is really important. The second part is, the truth is, if you're in charge of growing something that's garbage, you're not gonna grow anything. The product, if you're in the software business, obviously the software is very important. um, a great product is always the best foundation for growth. There's no way around that. And it might seem like one of these things that you hear at every company, where a bad sales guy is always going to say, yeah, but the product isn't working, like I can't sell this. And then you got the engineering team saying, yeah, but the sales guys are bad, they cannot sell my awesome software. But at the end of the day, the truth is, if you build great products, growing is much simpler, right? Because you can count on organic growth. If you have to always be knocking at everybody's door for someone to buy your product, becomes way more complicated on the long term.
So understanding your customers, your target audience is key, and then building a great product to
Yeah.
serve them what they are looking for, right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
To serve them what they are looking for, like
Yeah,
what they exactly need.
exactly. And I think just generally, you can have a company that's going to be really good at building great software and also really good at talking to their audience and selling it. But sometimes you find companies where these two entities do not really communicate to each other,
Mhm.
right? And I think um, a key driver of success is to find the right way internally to exchange, information, what you've learned from the field, and communicate back and forth. I think that's really important. You get tons of examples of companies that build great software, that have great sales guys, and that don't necessarily perform as well as they could. And one of the reasons often is that you can have two groups of talented people. They need to communicate and work with each other for growth to be successful at a company.
Yeah, about setting goals when you work on something, you probably have short-term and long-term goals and strategic objectives. How do you set the balance between those two?
Yeah, so usually, in my opinion, it's important to make a clear difference between strategy and tactics, right? You have people at a company, whether it's like the CEO or the CMO, that set the strategic vision for the company, and this is where we're going. And this is when everybody else comes in, and everything that you do has to contribute to that higher level vision and strategy, right? It's when tactics become important, because tactics are how you effectively implement the strategy or make it happen, right? And this, in my opinion, is the zone where, whether from the growth, marketing, sales team, customer success, engineering, whatever, everybody is contributing to these. Then what I think matters a lot is to have a methodology and a way to measure, the strategies divided in three main objectives. How are we faring in comparison to these objectives on a daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis? How much did we contribute, and how far are we from achieving some goals, right? Long-term goals are nothing but the accumulation of short-term execution wins, right? This is how you get there, one step at a time.
Right.
So I think you just do the path on the backward side, isn't it? The example, there's an example that's pretty famous. I don't know who said that. Is that when you're a kid, you get the cereal box, and there's a maze at the back of the cereal box, right? And you can start from path A and see where it leads, or you can start from the end and work your way back and see the path that you got to take to get there. I think this is the most important part when it comes to turning strategy into sizable chunks that you can actually action and turn into tactics. So yeah, it's really about translating the strategy into some things that you can execute on a day-to-day. I think that's the most important part.
Right. And then, as far as I understand from what you're saying, also reflecting on how you're performing, how it's going.
Yeah. If you lose visibility on how you're doing, how do you estimate? Like if you have a 3-year roadmap, and after year 1, you have actually zero visibility on what have every action that you took, how did they contribute to getting to the goals that were set up at the strategic level?
Right.
If you don't see that, how do you know? Like, you show up at work every day and you start guessing. I think guessing is the opposite of how you run growth, which needs to be very data driven and very factual and objective, right?
And that's exactly the question I'd like to ask next. How do you measure the success of your growth initiatives? Like, what are the metrics you use to track progress?
Well, so in my view, which is not general truth by any means, I like to have a very loose framework about experimenting things and defining before you run the experiment which are the indicators that you're going to retain to measure whether it was successful or not. I'll give you an example that I think is very easy to understand. Let's say you're going to work on an email program, right? It's very easy. Everybody sends emails. But emails have a goal. The goal is to turn the readers into clickers, into potential customers, or at least prospects.
Right.
So obviously, the metrics you're going to look at is what? Emails open, number of clicks, and number of people that actually took the action that you wanted them to take with you in the end, right? But if you don't do that, and it happens a lot, we're all humans, and sometimes the temptation to look at vanity metrics to say, hey, this was really successful exists. We all do that. So if you're going to send 1 million emails and nobody's going to open them, nobody's going to click on them, and nobody's going to talk to you, and you're going to report that you had, we did 99% deliverability on this email campaign. That's awesome, guys. Kudos. Then it becomes very useless, right? You're just a waste of time and energy for everybody. So I think it's very important to just start with an assumption. If we do this is what we should expect in return. To know if that worked, we're going to retain these 2 metrics or indicators. Run your experiment, take a very objective look at it. And this was sometimes very humbling, and you gotta, your ego takes a punch, right? Because that's my idea. It's terrible. We're gonna scratch that.
So in that case, you start with an educated guess, like you have some idea about what the field is.
So
and,
there's a
right.
what we do usually is we use a slightly updated or changed version of the Bullseye framework, where we just dump all of the ideas, and then we give multiple indicators, different columns per idea. One being rank all of them between 1 and 5. What's the feasibility? How well do we think this contributes to goal A or B? Do we have any historical data about this? Do we see any industry related examples of this potentially working or giving signs of traction? Do we have any other example in different industry verticals? And what's your personal bias, right? Because over time, you start maybe injecting a little bit of experience into it and having your bias play a part in how you're going to weigh the experiments. But at the end of the day, yeah, what matters is you're just going to try to do something low-hanging fruit first. If you have a low-hanging fruit tactic that can actually contribute heavily into one of the goals that is set at a company level, that's the obvious starting point, right? You're not going to start with that one thing that needs 3 years of development before you might actually see any sign of traction. You start with what's most likely to work.
That's right.
That's the idea.
What do you think about what mistakes do companies make when trying to drive growth, and how can they be avoided?
I think we all make tons of mistakes, right? And a big part of growth is to make the mistakes. I think from a company level, you got a lot of CEOs or founders for startups that subscribe to the idea of experimenting things until we find, what's the right mix for us, until the first failure. And then all the speech falls down and it's like, yeah, so you were just talking. You didn't actually subscribe to this idea that we have to try many things and fail many experiments before we actually get to the zone that is working for us as a product and as a company and a group of people, right? So I think that's one thing. And the other, I would say the other one that's everywhere is ego. There's the quote from Demings, I think, Edward Demings, that says, "In God we trust and everyone else bring data." When you start giving your opinion and making your opinion the key driver of anything, in my opinion, that's gonna, unless you're a genius, there's geniuses out there, but
even those can make mistakes, right?
Exactly. So as soon as you start getting your opinion in the way, it's gonna be an issue, because to do growth effectively, in my opinion, the only things that matter is facts and metrics. And then if you make decisions that are not data driven at any point in time, you start putting bias in everything that you do. It might work for some people. I just believe that on the long run, just stick to the process.
Right. And how do you see the role of innovation in all this? Like, does innovation play a role in driving growth, or do you foster a culture of innovation within your organization to keep things going?
I mean, the answer to that question is, we're working in the technology industry, and obviously innovation is baked in anything that you do, right? Sometimes it actually is backfiring a bit, because you see that new, you guys are developers, I'll give you an example, you see this new React framework or sexy JS library that you've seen a couple guys doing awesome stuff with it, and then you start just putting it in every single project when it may not actually have been the best choice for that specific project, right? We all do that. You just go check in engineering, marketing, sales, everywhere. We have this tendency of, oh, this is cool, let's just add the cool factor. You look at ChatGPT. Soon to order McDonald's, you're gonna use AI to translate your query into something that McDonald's can understand, which it doesn't have its place, but it's cool, so we do it, and but overall, yes, more seriously, innovation is just baked in. You cannot say you're a Silicon Valley software company and you don't care about innovation.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're Salesforce.
You can't avoid it, right?
Yeah.
And how do you stay up to date with the latest trends and developments in your industry? I mean, everything is changing so quickly, and how
Hmm.
do you incorporate all that knowledge into your growth strategies?
That's actually a really good question. I think um, a lot of us do this very organically. Um, it's not something that is structured. There's no process around, surveying the industry on a regular basis just to feel what are the trends and stuff. This is the beauty of communicating all together, right? You get a ton of sales guys that are on the field. They always come back and say, "Hey, I spoke over there. There was this show. I saw this. It was pretty cool." And then, they talk for lunch or dinner or whatever. You start talking. And then we obviously spend way too much time on the internet, all of us. Um, so basically, the information, we all do tend to create echo chambers around what we're doing for a living or our personal opinions in our not work life. So you're kind of surrounded with all these things pretty much at all times, right?
Right.
And then it's really about figuring out which parts do you keep and which parts do you just let go because it might not apply to you. And I think we're human, so we're the worst filter for that, because when we think something is cool, we're just going to be like distorting reality so that it fits into the path, right? But that's part of it. Everybody does it. So
Right. And how do you approach customer acquisition and retention? What tactics have been most effective for you in driving growth?
oof, this one is this one is a long form podcast. No, I think just generally, without becoming boring and talking half an hour about this, just generally, if you define your customer profile accurately, if you spend the time and effort to meet some of them, to actually not just sit in a conference room with a whiteboard and say, "Hey, we got customer A. His name is John. He's between 30 and 40, and he has a manager role." And when you actually do the effort and do the work of going and talk to people, ask them, what they want, what they like, how can you help them, etc. You gather the needs, then you deliver something that fits their needs,
Mhm.
coupling with commercial offering and good user experience. There's quite a good mix there. Um, Generally, that should yield something positive. I think if you're wrong on the customer persona, it skews the whole thing, right? You're just
Right.
building the leaning tower of Pisa because the first foundational block was kind of slanted. Um, so I think, yeah, just generally in life, if you put in the work, you put in the work from early on, and
Yeah.
you follow the playbook that your company has established, that you've established, um, it turns out to be working. Um, the specifics obviously is way too too granular to get into in like a 5-10 minute conversation.
But that's a great answer. Thank you. And lastly, what would you advise? What advice would you give to growth leaders looking to drive sustainable growth in their companies?
I think a very important part is to say no a lot. I think saying no is very important because I'll give you a simple example. You're working on a website. You know what's working on a website like.
Right.
Um, Everybody has an opinion, right? But if you're the one that has been monitoring website performance, testing ideas to make it better, saw signs of traction, and now you want to revisit the website, including these changes, and you get someone at the company who says, "Nah, I don't think we should do that. It's better to do this thing that he just pulled out of his hat." Um, it's very important to say no. It's not necessarily easy because sometimes you feel pressure, right? CEO comes and says, "Hey, no, let's not do that."
Yeah.
Then you got to say, "I don't think that's a good idea," and this is why. And this is where data is beautiful, because you don't really have to get into like a confrontation of people. You can get into a confrontation of ideas if you have something that's backed up with data and facts. Usually it works, but you sometimes have to stand your ground a little, and I think saying no is very important.
Mhm.
um, and the other part is the method. Whatever your process is, follow it. Do not start cutting corners. Do not start. If you have a process, if this is how you come up with the ideas, this is how you prioritize them, this is how you execute, this is how you measure, then keep following that plan. And sometimes it becomes hard because I can just jump these steps. It's gonna go faster,
Right.
But you shouldn't. Just trust the process. Joel Embiid, trust the process.
Right. Okay. Well, that's it. Thank you. But I would also like to ask about the business relationship with Supplyframe and Fabrikod. As you know, working together for quite some while.
Yeah.
How's that been going for you? Like, how's your experience been so far working with
Our experience has been amazing. All the feedback that I got from all the different work streams that we've established together, everyone was very happy with Fabrikod. I like that all of the things we discussed, I can really easily see them working with Fabrikod. I like that the work gets done, the talent is there, the quality is there, the work's done, it's delivered on time. This is basically, what do you ask for more, right?
Right.
It's in my opinion, it's a very very fruitful relationship that we've established, and I'm really, really happy about it.
So that's been a great conversation. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much.
It's been very helpful.
I hope so. Cool.
Looking forward to hosting you again. And thanks for your time. And thank you for watching.
All right. See you, everyone.
And stay well.